Hello, space friends. Welcome to episode 11 of Voices New Eden, where players share their stories of the EVE Online universe. Today, you're going to hear from another player who found their way from the battlefields of Dust 514 to the stars of New Eden in EVE Online. Once he found his way to EVE, he jumped in feet first and not only landed in LowSec, but created a corporation as well. EVE has always been a sandbox, and ambition certainly can be rewarded with great memories and experience. Now, it's time to undock and dive into yet another story that shaped the fabric of our beloved game.
Hey, so I go by CaseyLP. I've been playing EVE now for about 9 years. Have about 13,000 hours in the game, and I've been in low-sec and null-sec. The only places I haven't been is room space and high-sec, and I've mainly been a PvP-focused player. I do a lot of solo PvP. I have over 1,500 solo kills. I also do a bit of FC small gang, and I've even had some experience in the tournament scene. I was not in this last Alliance tournament, but the previous Alliance tournament with the Brave team. I did say that I've been playing for 9 years, but technically I've been playing in the EVE universe since 2013. So 12 years since I started with Dust 514 back in 2013. So I was just a teenager at that time, and I had stricter parents than most. I wouldn't really get any money for video games or stuff like that. I did get a PS3 for my birthday, and that's how I actually found out about Dust because it was a free-to-play game, which is perfect for me because I didn't really get that much money to get video games. And so I saw it on the front page of the PlayStation Store, and I started playing it, and well, the rest is history. Dust got me really interested into actually Eve lore and the road and all of that. And when Dust shut down, it was a pretty easy transition for me to go from Dust to Eve. I think I'm probably one of the only Eve players who knew most of the Eve ships and the Eve lore and how to fit stuff because Dust had a very similar fitting system to Eve. I think I spent 30 to 45 days researching everything I could about Eve before I even made my first character. I even when I still played Dust, I read the Empires of Eve novel. I think I'm probably the only Eve player that read the Empires of Eve novel before I even started playing the game. So I would say I was a bit more ambitious than most new players because when I started playing Eve, the first thing I did, I moved to Morden Heath Losec within my first 2 weeks, and I started my own corp as a new bro within the first 2 weeks of starting the game. And a lot of blind leading the blind because a lot of the people I recruited were also new players like me. And I did end up getting my corp to, I think, 40 or 50 members before I decided it was time to try something else. Because if anyone that's ever led a corp before knows how time consuming it is. So right now, it's PvP of all kinds. I still do a lot of solo PvP. I try to do a lot of solo PvP. Recently got myself a few Tholoses to try those, the new Deathless ship. And besides that, I also am trying to get back into FCing. I didn't FC for a few months, but right now I've seen a few fleets, mainly and revived my alliance's Hawkfin Sig, which I am attempting to do more stuff with that. So I've been part of Deepwater Hooligans or Big AB, as some people know us by, for the past. Well, it's almost been 2 years now. It's almost been 2 years. It's actually after I came back to Eve in 2023. I knew some people in Deepwater, and they helped me get in, and I've been with them ever since 2023. I also sometimes play just with people from other alliances too, like the AKC SIG, which is mainly pandemic horde people, but also just people from all over the game who like to do blops drops and all that. Yeah, I mainly consider myself part of Big AB, and I do have connections in a lot of different alliances, but Big AB is where my home is. I think the most attractive thing for me about Eve is just how a player can have a real impact on the game's geography, and you can really tell your own story in the game and impact other people's stories as well. You can be the good guy or the bad guy or a little bit of both. As for why I came back, I took a break from Eve. It was actually a self-imposed break. I didn't really want to take a break from Eve, but I had to focus on some schooling. And so after that was done, I came back. So I think I've had a little bit more perspective on this than a lot of people, but I think a real problem with the game, especially in nullsec right now, is projection. So I've been in all sorts of different corps and alliances. I've been part of smaller corps, smaller faction warfare corps. I've been part of medium nullsec alliances. I've been part of medium lowsec corps that have turned into medium nullsec alliances. Right now, I've spent the last 3 to 4 months in nullsec as part of a little alliance deployment. But right now, we just came back to lowsec. I think I have a little bit more perspective on it because I've been in those medium and small alliances, and I've also been in the bigger alliances like Brave and Legacy Coalition. I think the biggest thing with projection is it allows these big groups, Goonswarm, Fraternity, Horde, Pandemic Legion, NC, you name it. It allows these big groups to have more control than they should have over vast swaths of space. Now, I don't think there's any problem with these big alliances existing. In fact, more power to them. But I think Ansiplexes make that problem more exacerbated because it basically means what was 20 to 25 jumps for a response fleet, now that turns into 5 to 10 jumps, which makes it a lot harder for smaller and medium scale alliances in nullsec to exist. Now, there are some areas of space where they do exist, like the southeast is a good region, the Torrid and Scalding Pass, that area. I know because that's where we were deployed to just recently, so I know that there's smaller medium scale alliances that do still exist, but it's definitely nowhere near where it used to be, especially when I started playing the game. There were a lot more smaller and medium scale alliances in nullsec. That is much rarer nowadays, with especially with antiplexes. I think a reasonable fix to antiplexes is just add fatigue to them. I know it's a very common thing that's said, just add antiplexes to fatigue, but it's common because it is generally agreed upon that that would fix a lot of the problems. And even jump bridges before the upwell flex structures, antiplexes, the old jump bridges from the previous SOV iteration had fatigue, and that was an era where more small and medium alliances existed in nullsec. So I just think adding fatigue to antiplexes would fix a lot of the problems with projection. It wouldn't fix all of it, but it would fix a lot of it. Oh, I might need to think about this one. I think maybe one of my I actually do have to think about this because there's a couple I can pick from. I think I have one. So I don't remember the exact time this happened. It was probably back in 2018 or 2019, but I was part of an alliance called Federation Uprising, and this alliance was a little bit more unique. It was both the largest and most active Galente militia alliance at that time, as well as a SOV holder in Cloud Ring Nullsec. And a brief background behind that is basically the Galente militia, they completely stomped Calmo, so they were bored and decided to take Cloud Ring SOV because that was, I guess, the only content they had that was near them because the Caldari militia was dead. I came just after that into the alliance, uh, but the Cloud Ring area of Galente militia groups was known as affectionately as Galmilistan, and months passed by. We held the SOV. Sometimes we deployed to it to fight some other people that were in that area, and then the war with goon swarms against CO2 uh, and those northern alliances took place. Goons, of course, placed a keep star in one of our systems, and we decided it would be better to see if we could break up with them instead of them just rolling over our space because we could maybe form 100, 150 if we were lucky, and that's nothing to Goonswarm's numbers. So we decided to blue up with them so that we didn't get steamrolled. And Snuffed Out at that time were part of the Imperium, and Snuffed Out were always planning on taking, basically evicting us from our space. And this course of events made them delay that plan. But after Snuffed Out left the Imperium, they launched a full-scale campaign against Federation Uprising in both Lowsec and Nullsec, and our former allies, Rapid Withdrawal, who were Galmil, they also turned on us and worked with Snuff to do that. So basically, our Cloud Ring sovereignty was being pushed up against on one side by Rapid Withdrawal, and on the other side, from the Lowsec entrance of, I think it was Mantinault, into Pureblind, because we did take some Pureblind Sov. They were pushing in from that side, Snuff was. And I remember one of the biggest battles that took place during that time, uh, we were having 3 separate hostile Astrohuses anchor in our space in 3 different systems, one of them in our main Fortizar grid, and Snuff was coming in force with dreadnoughts, and they were doing rattlesnakes and fax support. And Snuff, of course, at this time, they were a really big group. They still are. Um, that hasn't really changed, but they came with everything they got. And so what my alliance decided to do, they decided to go with a delaying tactic. In that system, there is basically one system they had to go through to get to where their anchoring structures were. And that's and in that system, our alliance placed dozens upon dozens of mobile warp disruptors. And in preparation for that fight, maybe a week before the fight happened, maybe even less, our alliance built, I think, on the order of 200 to 300 T1 Hurricanes to go up against this Apex Rattlesnake and Fax and Dreadnought composition. And so we fought them head on in that system, and they did get to the system they had to go through, but it took them over an hour for them to go through one system. And this was not a tie-dye fight. This was a real-time. There may have been some tie-dye, but it wasn't big because it was a less than a 400-person fight, and it took them an hour to get through. And we just kept smashing hurricanes upon hurricanes among them. We would sometimes get a kill or two, and they would kill 20 hurricanes. We'd replace them. By the time they managed to make it to the system they were trying to make it to, a whole bunch of alliances were able to show up. We didn't call anyone. They just showed up of their own volition. Even the Caldari militia, and we were Galente militia. The Caldari militia showed up to support us, and I think Goonswarm showed up. Some other entities, basically a whole bunch of these random entities, just showed up to support us, holding the line basically against the snuffed out fleet. And we did end up beating them back after beating them back in that fight. They did end up eventually evicting us from that space. It took them a few more weeks to do that, and we ended up joining Legacy Coalition in the Southeast and doing all of that. But I think that was probably one of the most memorable, at least, experiences in my EVE career, just because it was basically we were a new player-friendly alliance against this big low-sec powerhouse. Basically, we put it all out there to meet them head on, and it worked for a little bit at least. I think the biggest lasting impression it had is the players that it brought over. One of the biggest things it had was the players that it brought over. It brought me over, and I know a lot of other players that came from Dust to EVE, and in a not insignificant number of players migrated from Dust 514 to play EVE. And it might have been because Dust shut down, or because they had started playing Dust and they decided to try out EVE before Dust shut down, and then they decided to do EVE full time. But I think the impact Dust had bringing newer players into the main EVE Online game had a big impact. And I think another big impact that it had was a proof of concept that you could take two different games and connect them on the back end. And although they did have limited interaction with each other, it was still more. And I think even to this day, it's still more interaction that two games directly have on each other than I think we've, at least during that time period, ever seen, and maybe even ever seen to this period. I don't know of any other games out there that have that had that kind of connectivity between two different games like that. I think this one goes out to all the newer players and all the people that are a little bit afraid of PvP. This might be something that's commonly said, but buy 10 of your favorite T1 frigate, move them to a low-sec NPC station, and lose them trying to PvP in Plexes. You might just find your new favorite activity in EVE.
And that, Space Friends, is the story of a player who didn't sit around and wait for opportunities just to come to him. His journey is proof that in EVE, success isn't about where you start. It's about the choices you make along the way. So, before I go, I want to do a quick heads up. If you enjoy these interviews but can't always watch a video, Voices New Eden is expanding. Each Sunday, along with a new video interview, an audio-only podcast version of a past episode will be released. These will have the questions read out, so you can take the stories with you. Whether you're commuting, working, orbiting a gate, or waiting for the right moment to drop on your target. Be sure to help this project get into other EVE players' YouTube suggestions by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Stay tuned for more voices, more stories, and more memories about events past. Until next time, I'm Kshal Aideron, and this is Voices of New Eden.